Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Select Board meeting, formerly known as January 23rd. We have rescheduled today, January 30th. Let's begin, as we usually do, with the Pledge of Allegiance. I will lead it today. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right. So a quick recap, a quick update on the agenda. We're going to start with department and board updates, town clerk, human resources, conservation, and Littleton Electric, Light and Water. We'll then have a public hearing to discuss municipal elections, vote by mail, public input and members' updates, followed by a joint meeting with the Sustainability Committee. Two items on select board discussions, discussion on our policy of acceptance of gifts, and a discussion about fire chief performance and goals evaluations, update on the special town meeting, town administrator update, preview of mid-year review, employee review process, update on recruitment for the new finance town accountant, and amendment to the contract for the Shattuck Center. Finally, we will approve of January 9th. We will adjourn the public session and finish the evening with an executive session, and we won't return from that. So, Mr. Administrator, would you like to start with the mail?
Sure, Mr. Chair. Just one thing. I just want to remind the public, still looking for some volunteers for a number of committees: Cultural Council, Master Plan Implementation Committee, Open Space, PMBC, Sustainability Committee, and Transportation Advisory Council. So we're still looking for volunteers to help. I think that one of those committees, we do have an application, and we should be looking to fill one of those boards at our next meeting, but certainly a little bit more help and would be greatly appreciated.
Thank you. All right. Ms. Crory, you're up.
Good evening, and thank you for having me this evening. It's that time of year when we need to think about who we will be dedicating our annual town report. Hopefully you have in front of you the 7 people that we are thinking about dedicating our town report to. You have the synopsis for each and every person. Tonight I'm just going to go through the names, and I'd like you to go over them for the next week until your next meeting, and when we come back next time, hopefully you'll make a decision as to whether to accept them, whether you want to add others, or whatever your decision is. And the way that I put this together is by date of death, sadly. The first one is Pauline Byrne. The next one is Eric Turner, Edward Howard, Millie McGovern, Sandra DeFriest, Margaret Fraser Romley, and Sally Bowers.
Thank you.
Any questions for tonight? You also have in your packet all the persons that lived in Littleton and passed, as well as anyone else that actually passed in Littleton.
Thank you. Any questions or?
Just to add on that, just for Diane's purpose, when a resident passes away, we're made aware of that, but it's the residents that move away that Diane really has to go digging to find out and to try to make sure that that's included in the list. So she does a lot of work behind the scenes to make sure that she makes sure those names are presented for the board. So there's a lot of extra that it's not as clear as just printing a list, because that's only good for when we're in Littleton.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll see you next week.
I'm surprised at all the people that passed away.
Yeah.
I just think in our town, the size of our town, that seemed like a big number to me.
Michelle, good evening.
Good evening. This evening tonight we are in front of you to make 2 requests, hoping that you approve 2 motions. The first is to approve the request of our personnel review panel to adopt a revised job description for the assistant park and rec director. It has not been looked at since 2017. And I will have Alicia go into very briefly, I know she has talked about it in a past meeting, but just briefly summarize what those changes are. We did submit a revised job description that you can see in front of you. And the second motion is to, if you do make that approval, shift the current employee from grade 13, step 3 to grade 14, step 1. So currently the position is at grade 13. After the Personnel Review Committee did review all of the changes that were recommended, they did regrade it at a grade 14 on the new compensation table.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
And just a short explanation of things that we had clarified in that job description. So incorporating the Red Cross training for all of the seasonal staff, that's a very important component of this job. Recognizing the specific areas of responsibilities and operations, such as the special events and beach operations, and clarifying and recognizing the level of risk management and staff supervision of the specific position. So those are some of the main areas where we focused. I also did want to add that the Park Commission did support this as well at their last meeting. So,
Do you have a sense of if you can compare this to other assistant directors, whether the responsibilities here are in line with what you might find in a candidate for this position?
are you speaking about recreation specifically, or just an assistant
Recreation
director?
specifically, like the
Yeah.
Red Cross stuff, and I mean, that seems like somewhat perhaps specialized, but I don't know, maybe that's
Yeah.
a requirement for most of these jobs.
I think that it's something you see very commonly in recreation. I think the area where we specialize is that we do have a waterfront where a lot of towns may not necessarily have that. So for us, that is one unique piece of this job for this position.
Do you have any comments?
No, I did help work on this, and I want to thank Steve Venuti, who's here, and Bill Schmidt as well. A lot of the information and red ink version, I know they helped with you as well. So I appreciate your work putting into this, and I think it's a much better depiction of what that position does for
Great.
the town of Littleton. Yeah.
Mark or Cindy, comments?
You asked my question.
Anything
Same,
from you?
yeah, I was
Okay.
going to ask the same thing.
I guess we're ready for a motion.
Move the select board vote to approve the request of the Personnel Review Panel to adopt a revised job description for the Assistant PRCE Director and upgrade Assistant PRC Director Tim Mitkowski from a grade 13 step 3 to a grade 14 step 1 effective January 1st, 2023.
Second.
Motion made by Mark, seconded by Cindy. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The motion carries 4-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Thanks.
All right, Amy, Conservation.
Good evening, Amy Green, Conservation Agent. I was just here to give you an update on the grant that has been submitted for the Mass Trails with the Department of Conservation and Recreation to build out a ADA trail at Cloverdale. It would basically go from the existing parking lot down to the existing boardwalk. We looked at, this is sort of the end of easily sort of a 5-year wish list to do this, and finally had time to pull it together, and then just serendipitously, Green Engineering approached me and said, hey, we can help you write a grant for something if you want. I said, have I got something for you? So we had looked at any number of different areas that do this. The two that rose to the top were Long Lake Park and Cloverdale. Yep, you go ahead. The Long Lake Park would be, I think it was about 900 feet, and would go from the end of Colonial down to Long Lake itself on basically a paper road, so it's pretty straight and flat run right down there, as you can see from these pictures. There's a small parking lot there that would have needed improvement, and the other concern, well, first of all, it would have been 3 times as expensive at Cloverdale to begin with. And I was a little concerned with it being at the end of Colonial, which is basically a dead end, and how the neighbors might feel about developing that, putting in a bigger parking lot, and potential security issues if dirt bikers or other people start getting into this approved trail where there's really nobody watching what's going on out there. So we ended up deciding to go for the grant for Cloverdale, shown in the yellow there. That's about 300 feet, give or take. Fairly flat. It's the whole thing is less than 5%, which is what ADA requires, so we're in pretty good shape there. It would connect through this field down to the existing boardwalk, which is actually also part of a DCR grant from 2017, 2018, I think it was. So the boardwalk itself is ADA compliant. You just can't get there from here. So you can just skip that because that was an old estimate. Right now, the grant was asking for the state from something over $30,000, which isn't quite reflected in here, with the town match being about $15,000 for the total cost being $45,000. The town match is almost entirely labor from the highway department. Some of my time, some of the land steward's time to do some of the boardwalk improvements that need doing. Donation from aggregate for some of the gravel. And then because frankly, we were at a 33% match and they only require 20, I was trying to take a little bit of the burden off the highway from doing everything. So I put in things like the erosion controls and stabilization and the loam and seed as something that we could pay a contractor to do, so highway didn't have to worry about it. That's pretty much it. It had many letters of support, including from Park and Rec and EHS and sustainability and disability and the trust, and about 25 or 30 letters from the public as well supporting it.
Great, thank you.
So two things, if I can add with that, Mr. Chair. So during the budget conversations, it came up about the money that sits in the town administrator's account as far as potential grant and why. So this is one of those examples why we have a grant opportunity that if we had to kick in a little money, that's what that money's for. And the second thing, in full disclosure, last meeting at the 23rd, when this was going to go before you, we needed to, I already signed the document, even though you were going to be authorizing me to sign my document, because we didn't want to miss the deadline. It's always if the board felt at that point they didn't want the grant, we still could, at that point, when we come back to accept it, that we've received it at that point, we could have, or we could have let them know after. But I just want you to know I had to sign it because we didn't want to miss an opportunity.
Thank you. I'm fine with that.
And actually, a little bit, in light of a reimbursement grant, so the town would need to expend the money, which isn't much in terms of cash, and then the state reimburses everything.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks. Comments, questions?
I guess my question would only be, so the field itself, with the swamp, water, there's already an ADA compliant boardwalk there, but I mean, just by design, it's ADA compliant the way that we put it in.
Because that was a DCR grant, it had to be.
Okay.
It would have been
that's the
anyway, frankly,
Okay.
but,
And this gets an individual from the car down to that boardwalk that ends at the end of that. Doesn't go all the way around Cloverdale. Just,
right, the trail goes all the way
Yeah.
around, but it'd be very difficult to make that whole thing ADA. So we're proposing at the far end to be sort of a
Place.
turnaround area
That's what I
with
was
a
gonna
bench
ask.
and a sitting area
Okay,
for anybody who so wants. Yeah.
thank you.
My only question is on if we had to spend town funds from the 15,000 for the match or whatever, would we go after CPC funds or just use your discretionary account? Or?
Timing. You know, if we could go after CPC. If it's something that we had to do quicker, then we would use the funds that we have.
All right. Ready for motion? Oh, I'm sorry. Could you state your name?
Yeah, we have a prepared statement.
Okay.
Good evening, Brody Adama, Maureen Adama, 5 Old Farm Road. We completely support ADA access to open space, nature, including the beach, playgrounds, ball fields, etc. In fact, ADA compliance and access is why we supported the new library. We also think at the start of any project the town takes on, the Disability Commission should be involved, as they are the experts regarding how ADA needs can be best addressed. We understand zoning and building regs via inspections cover what is mandated by state and building code, but community input should be encouraged. In fact, it should be a practice. We also think anytime there is a proposed change to town-owned property or land, the community at large should be able to speak to it, ask questions, and give input on the proposal. This does happen often. An example of this recently was the new replacement tennis courts. The subject appeared on the agendas of both Select Board and Park and Rec. Please note that this request is to apply for a grant for the Cloverdale property. It's never appeared on Concom agenda, and although this is not the issue tonight, not having topics and subjects correctly posted is a regular practice and occurrence regarding Concom. Tonight, there really should be a proposal at hand, not just a request to submit a grant. Maybe our mistake, but we may have not seen a meeting packet for the meeting. The grant application must require information regarding what is proposed. There should be something for town people to review. Grant should be sought after or when a project is close to shovel-ready and a community cannot cover the cost of the project or require supplemental funding. It should not be just a money grab. That's a bad look. Nice examples of grassroots projects not having grants, although they were a while back, is the town track and Castle in the Trees. Lots of planning, community participation resulting in great resources for town people. Both are projects Littleton can be proud of. There has not been a venue for public input other than one quick Disability Commission meeting on December 21st, 2022. No minutes are available online from this meeting communicating what occurred. We would like to see community outreach on such a proposal, maybe a posting at the trail kiosk asking for input on ADA access makes sense. You'll be reaching the individuals that actually use the trails. What needs to be communicated is what is being addressed or being solved by this. Tells the hows and whys a location is the best choice. Will the project change or impact current use of the location during construction or after construction, such as no dogs allowed, restricted hours? Also, timeline for construction, what days or hours of work. Cloverdale has been under construction in one form or another since 2014. Also, thoughts on the use, 12 months, summer only, etc. Is parking included in the proposal? Should the town, as in cases such as with the tennis and pickleball courts, space needs evaluation, senior citizen location, and library location, have a qualified firm evaluate all town land and maybe conservation trust land to suggest and or recommend ADA access to trails in nature? Have a care plan after the project is complete, such as all inspections for ADA compliance, repairs, and maintenance. Will this project be going out to bid? Because we've heard Jim O'Neill will be doing it. Will the selected contractor be qualified and licensed for ADA work? What is the cost? What is the material? What size, etc.? Questions go on and on. Ms. Green has stated her volunteer numbers are way down and will continue to go down. This indicates that the likelihood of a volunteer having ADA construction experience is minimal. Honestly, Ms. Green should finish what is already in the queue, such as Mary Shepherd Trails and other boardwalks. Not only can we do better, but we should also do better. Let's get it right from the get-go. The town Concom should be held to the same standard as any other entity making changes in the town. All should provide info up front and allow input and questions from the community, and have as many meetings as it takes to have a satisfied majority. We would love to be part of the solution. We'd be happy to visit and report on locations that have ADA provisions regarding passive recreation trails. We think Cloverdale has potential for ADA access and think a picnic area in parcel 6A adjacent to the parking lot behind the kiosk would be wonderful. Opportunity to make that town-owned parcel useful and desirable to visitors has been a wish of ours. There isn't anyone caring for the garden. Currently, there isn't anyone caring for the garden or removing fallen trees on the trails, the fallen birdhouses, and other items. As users of the property ourselves, we did what we could to maintain it. We also reported a large tree on the trail to the town to be removed. Even on the April town-wide litter pickup day, there was only one guy who showed up to the
So,
work.
I'm sorry, this is going on quite a bit.
I'm done.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I just have one other comment. If Amy has 25 letters supporting this, the 11 people that use Cloverdale on a weekly basis, some of us on a daily basis, not one of them have done it, and we do really believe that there is an undercurrent of trying to get the dogs that use this property to move elsewhere. And that's why we're concerned about when the construction will be and how it would affect this. Sadly, there is somebody that believes it should not be as used often as it is by dogs.
I have one question. So Who holds the conservation restriction on Cloverdale, and who owns the land?
There is no conservation restriction.
Oh.
It's straight ownership with the Conservation Commission.
Okay. Is there a plan to put it in CR on it?
No, it was, boy, if I remember initially, it was a sort of transfer of land with Rec Department.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so pieces were moved around, and because of the slope in the wetlands, it really wasn't usable for any rec, so
Okay.
there was a swap that went on.
Thank you. Any other comments or discussion?
I don't think we discussed on public input
No, I mean, discuss about the motion.
in general. Okay.
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Ready for a motion?
Move that the select board vote to authorize the town administrator, Anthony Insoldi Jr., to apply for a Mass Trails grant application for the Cloverdale Americans with Disabilities ADA Trail as recommended by Conservation Agent Amy Green.
Second.
Motion made by Mark, seconded by Cindy. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries 4-0.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amy.
Nick, good evening.
Good evening, Nick Lawler, General Manager, Light and Water. Thanks for having me tonight. This is going to be something that I'm hoping to be as quick as Diane, but I don't think it's going to happen. It's been in the works since, I think, 2019. I'm looking at Ryan because I think Ryan was the town administrator in Boxborough when this started. And they reached out to Light and Water for assistance solving a water contamination problem in Boxborough. It affects about 20% of the population there. It's an environmental justice community. And it started more of a partnership for, I would say, more technical assistance, trying to help them understand how and what solutions they may have. It's been through a lot of iterations since then, and it's really heating up now because of an SRF project grant that went in, or loan that went into the state successfully through Mass DOT. 50% of the contamination comes from Mass DOT, so they've been involved for years trying to solve this issue. For those that don't know what an environmental justice area is, environmental justice areas are defined by one of two criteria. It's 65% less than average, or 40% of the population is minority-based. And this part of Boxborough, this EJ community, hits both those criteria. Now, these people make, on average, about $30,000 a year. It's heavily minority ownership in those condominiums. And it's really a community we want to help. We have a long tradition with Boxborough on the light side, which is, I think, why Ryan can answer that better, but I think that's why they originally reached out to us to assist. We need to get a $19 million borrowing authorization through the town of Littleton to make this happen, which, it sounds like a scary number, but a lot of that is funded through betterments. About 14 out of the $19 million will be paid directly by the people that are connecting. And the reason why there's a discrepancy between the 14 and the 19 is because the town of Littleton, Light and Water, will be getting a new production well out of this. There's a well that's on the Amazon property that we acquired maybe 2 years ago. I lose track of time. That is good for at least 500,000 gallons per day, and we're in the permitting process now of that. At the time when Boxborough reached out to us, there was another potential well site that we were hopeful for. So Wickham Ave was designed for the additional capacity of another well. And it's about 65,000 gallons per day that would be consumed by the 1,100 residents in Boxborough. So Littleton gets more capacity, more daily capacity out of this project. Gets it on a 0% loan through the state because since we're partnering with Boxborough, they have a PFAS contamination issue. So we benefit from that financially. We qualify for a 0% loan. It's highly likely that, just like Wickham Ave, 20% of this will be loan forgiveness. Again, due to the PFAS nature of it. And the state DOT will also kick in some additional funding. They asked us to write a letter, which we have done, requesting funding, and we're hopeful we asked for $7 million, if they're a 50% contributor. So we're hopeful to receive a lot of external funding for this project, and not to mention about $2 to $3 million in connection fees from those properties as well. So at the end of the day, we believe that the ratepayers in Littleton that are already part of our system will benefit drastically because of this project with additional capacity and bettering our relationship with Boxborough. It's been a good relationship for over 100 years, 110 years, however long it's been. I think one question, and Ryan just pulled up a map of Anthony of the area. When people think of Boxborough, I think they often forget about the several condo associations that abut 495. That's the area we're talking about. It's Swanson and Codman Hill Road, if you're familiar with Boxborough at all. The water line would connect to Wickham Ave, where we have an existing distribution system, and it would feed about 4.5 miles to Codman Hill Road and Swanton Road. I'm trying to think what I'm forgetting here, probably a lot. I think that, and we talked with town council, the best way to move this forward would be through a special legislation, a special act that would allow Littleton Light and Water to operate as if this was our own service territory, similar to how electric department operates in Boxborough. I'm meeting with the town administrator in Boxborough on Wednesday. It'd be helpful if Anthony was part of those conversations so he could keep the select board up to date. Obviously, the town itself is very instrumental in making this happen because through a special act, but we're in front of town meeting, we're going through the select board. There'd probably be an intermunicipal agreement temporarily in place that the select board would be part of as well. I think that one question we've already been asked a lot is how does this impact irrigation of lawns, in our watering bans. And up before PFAS, this wasn't necessarily an issue. With PFAS, one of our supply wells at Speck Pond has been limited capacity, so we've had a watering ban in place because of that. But besides that, the DEP is what dictates in our permit with DEP the irrigation of lawns, and that's based off stream flow trigger. It's not based off our ability to supply water. It's much more regional than that. They're looking at different regions of the state, and when they declare droughts in those regions, that's when we have to implement water restrictions to comply with that permit. It's not necessarily due to our capacity. I'm sure there's questions.
Yeah, there's a ton.
So many
And I don't
questions.
know if this is our only meeting where we're going to be able to ask questions.
I mean,
Minutes
we
do we
should
have?
have as many meetings where we can ask questions as we need. It sounds like, no, I don't think this is going to be the only one.
Okay.
Are you thinking of bringing this to the Maytown meeting?
Yes.
A borrowing article?
Barring article and a special act.
Okay.
Is the hopes.
You want to start with the questions?
I mean, a couple just, I did watch, I think Anthony had shared the link to watch the Boxborough meeting, some of the Boxborough meetings. I saw the initial one, so I got spun up that way. I mean, Mark and I have only been on the select board since May, and that was the first I had heard about this, so I was a little surprised, 19 million.
Well, that was the first I'd heard of it as well.
Okay, that's what was my question. I didn't know, because you said it's been in the works since 2019.
Well, not necessarily this solution, right? So 2019, it's, hey, you come help us with this.
Yeah.
And then it's, hey, here's something we're working on. It hasn't even been in a lot of commissioners meetings, to tell you the truth. But then once the SRF, you guys are very familiar with SRF deadlines and how that works. Once we successfully got that loan, 0% loan, then now that kicks in all these deadlines. And we need funding in place prior to June 30th of this year.
Did you apply for did Littleton Electric Light or the Water Department apply for that loan?
No, it's through state DOT. I mean, we're ultimately responsible for it, so it'll be our project. But state DOT funded the preliminary engineering for this and funded the application that went into the SRF folks.
Yeah, a lot of the questions I have are going to be centered around Littleton's protection of that 19 million on
Yep.
default, and we can go down the list. I'm sure that attorneys are going to have to be much more involved in that. The water usage, so 500K is going to come out of that well. You said 65K initially to those two projects, well, not projects, these are two. I lived at Codman Hill, so I know that area quite well, but
Yep.
in the Swanson area. But what happens, I'm assuming if that's contaminated, what we're seeing, all those houses along those roads are also contaminated. What happens when they want to hook into this? Because they're, obviously, if they've got PFAS, all these neighbors have PFAS. What's the plan to hit on
Yeah,
that?
I mean, at that point, we're serving water to the entire state, right? You know, everybody's contaminated with PFAS. This was a very specific, isolated project that originated from Mass DOT because of the salt contamination.
Right, yeah, the
PFAS came
origins
along,
of it.
yeah, 2019, we weren't even solving a PFAS problem here yet.
Yeah.
So this was kind of before PFAS was an issue. What PFAS does is it gives us the opportunity for 0% loan forgiveness, and opens up for tons of opportunities to the Clean Water Trust and the SRF program because of that type of contamination. Because a lot of the federal dollars go to PFAS. They don't go to salt remediation,
I know,
unfortunately.
I'm still trying to get my arms around what happens when all those other residences, not just, those two are just two condominium complex, pretty good size, obviously, but what happens when they have an issue too?
Well, yeah,
Their answer is going to be, or their question is going to be, why can't we just connect to this water source that Littleton's bringing into? Is there going to be a mechanism for them to be able to do that? It's coming. We can't, right?
yeah, it is, and we gotta be mindful of what our capacity is.
And that was the other thing. That 500K, right now 65K would go to Boxborough. The rest of that is connected into Littleton's,
I mean, the whole thing is connected into Littleton, right?
right, out of the Amazon property.
Right, and it gives us redundancy, having another well adds capacity. But yes, projected about 65,000 gallons per day would be going to Boxborough.
And then the maintenance of that pipe, because it's going to cut through Harvard as well. I saw some, it looked
Yeah,
like,
that's, maybe.
Okay.
It like slivers through.
okay. So there may be,
How the
I'm just
road
thinking the maintenance now on that, on the Boxborough side of this belongs to Littleton.
Well,
I mean, once this is in and everything, and then it blows a leak or whatever, water
Yeah.
main break.
It's Littleton Water Department.
So,
right, but we collect through our rates.
Okay, that's
type
how
of
that-
maintenance. Which is another reminder, our debt service charge that everyone pays, so for Wickham Ave, for Cedar Hill, the storage tank, for all the projects that we do, that gets recovered through a debt service charge, which gets spread out amongst the usage. So these individuals, these 1,100 residences, would be, 1,100 residents would be picking up that, they'd be paying for that debt service through usage. So it lessens the burden by 65,000, not, unless this is.
yeah. So what happens now, let's say Codman Hill says, 3 years from now, we're not paying anymore. We're not, somebody comes in and buys it.
It'd be through a betterment. So they're paying through a betterment. So and those are details that we need to work out through the IMA and through special legislation of what's that mean.
How it would be recouped.
How it'd be
That's my
recouped,
concern.
Because the town of Boxborough will be responsible for collecting that betterment.
But it's a long-term, payment.
Yeah, it'd be like any other, it'd be like the sewer betterment. It'd be a similar situation. We're gonna borrow for this project over 20 years.
Yeah.
They're gonna assess a 20-year betterment. The town of Boxborough will have to collect that betterment and then give it to us.
What's the
The
mechanism?
betterment
for
gets
that?
registered at the registry of deeds, and that's
Yeah.
our protection too. It's just, that's the special act and the temporary MOU or whatever it might be, is to just make that temporary until the legislation, because Boxborough, sorry, is the one that would have to do their part. So I think that's where Nick would iron that out in the special legislation to make sure that the protections.
Just through
are
the
in
tax,
place.
probably through the tax system.
Yeah.
Right, it's just, if they didn't pay, it's just like if a resident doesn't pay us, and we have a
Levy.
betterment, then we're gonna.
Lean against the property.
Right, and eventually continue non-payment of your taxes, goes into tax title, and Steve goes from there.
Which is why it's important to have Anthony in those conversations, because he might understand some of those mechanics better than we would.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
What
you,
happens when we put a property in Boxborough in tax title?
And I think those are things that have to be worked out with the special act, right? To make sure that at the end of the day, that Boxborough does what they need to do.
Yeah, I'm not sure we could do that. I think
Right.
the town of Boxborough would have to do that.
Yeah.
Right, so that's why we would need to protect our interest through the special act. I think there's a lot to do to get it to the point where everybody will be satisfied.
so the I remember the special legislation for Whitcomb took forever. So the IMU is intended to bridge that so that we'll operate under that until the special legislation happens.
Yeah, I don't anticipate this one taking forever. Senator Eldridge is very much behind this due to the assistance to an environmental justice community.
Okay.
He was on one of the meetings, supports the project 100%. He has the ability to move these quickly if he needs to.
Yeah, I think, I mean, as a member of the board, I think we all agree on that side of it. It's ours is completely just making sure that our taxpayers that are on the hook for this at the end of the day have, because this is a debt that's going to, it's like anything, we're getting debt.
Yeah, I know.
That affects, it could affect us when we're going out for another loan, another loan, another loan. This could have, this obviously could have an effect.
I understand that concern, and it's valid from
Yeah,
the
so that's
select
just
board.
a
But
lot.
I think you have to understand that for it to become a town problem, the water department has to fail as well. Right? We'd have to not have the ability to cover that, just like we have properties now that don't pay their betterments.
Yeah.
And it doesn't cause an issue for you guys because we're covering that cost.
Okay. But one more thing on that I had, there's probably a million things. So Mike, the water ban, you mentioned the water ban. I know it's not directed by you, but how's it enforced? When we see the signs up all over Littleton, water ban in effect, and someone's out there watering their, property in Boxborough, how's it enforced? Is there going to be, I know that's small potatoes, this whole thing.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to think in my head when.
These properties aren't irrigated, these are condominiums.
Yeah.
But it's enforced by patrols. We have staff out patrolling. Yeah. It's enforced by neighbors calling. We get a lot of phone calls of neighbors calling.
We've seen that, yeah.
With technology in our metering system, we can verify. We can look into the meter and see what's going on. So there's ways to enforce it.
The 20% forgiveness, what's that based? You said it might be forgiven or it's likely to be forgiven. What's that based on?
Politics.
PFAS or?
Well, PFAS makes you eligible for it, but then it's the desire of the Clean Water Trust and state politics of is this a worthy project, and this one is. Mass DEP and Mass DOT have been with us for years trying to solve this problem.
What it's doing and who it's serving.
Yeah.
Too.
And would that 20% come out of? Whose cut would that? Whose side would that come out of?
The entire project.
Right, but like you're saying like 14 million from betterments, 5 million to essentially to Littleton. Does that 3.8 come out of R5 or does it? Right. So, does that make sense?
Yeah, I know what you're saying, but it's
you're not going to reduce the betterments by 3.8 if you get 20% forgiveness.
No. The whole project would drop 20%.
Okay, that's what I was asking. Okay. And then basically we're paying $5 million in a way to get a well, right? And the infrastructure around it. Is that a reasonable amount of money? Is it expensive? Is it?
Well, it is what it is. Whether we do it through this project or we go out and drill a well and pipe it back to the Wickam treatment plant, whoever's putting that transmission pipe in, same company that's going to do the distribution work, you might save some money on mobilization and have a one contract. But I don't think it'd be significant. So if we were not to do this project and we were to move forward with the Amazon well and the pipe work to pipe it to Wickham Ave, it's going to cost that $5-6 million.
Do you think you would anyway?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So when you're digging up Codman Hill Road, let's just use that as an example, is that all part of the project cost or is that something that the town of Boxborough DPW has to?
No, that's in the project
It
cost.
is.
Yep.
Right, and I asked Nick that it'd be a full reclamation, so it wouldn't be a patchwork. We'd end up having a new road.
Any questions, Mark?
Oh, sorry. So in your letter, you actually said that the Mass DOT money only applies to the Boxborough share, not the Littleton share. Is that correct?
That is correct. The Mass DOT money, because theirs is very much geared towards the betterments and their issues in Boxborough. Some of it would come off, and they do the math, and I think it's 13% if you look at 65,000 gallons per day into that 500,000 gallons per day. So some of that money would go towards the well, about 13% of it, but the rest would go towards their part of it.
And if we weren't doing the Boxborough project, when would we be looking at putting in when do we need the Amazon well?
Springtown meeting.
So so we would be looking at the Amazon well even if we weren't doing Boxborough, because it's not been on any light and water agenda. They've been talking about the Cobb property well, but not Amazon well.
Oh, it's been talked about, yeah.
Okay. I didn't see it on any agenda since this year.
Probably as capital project update, most of our projects are done in-house, they're not done at the board level. I think there's a misconception of what gets discussed at board meetings.
Okay.
Cindy?
I'm all set.
Just, I had one more.
Yeah, go
thing.
for it.
So this is going to be a finance article, obviously.
Yes.
We're probably going to have a joint meeting, or that you're going to have the same discussion at a FinCom meeting as well, because they're voting to recommend the article as well on that. So
Yep.
just-
Yeah, so I
okay.
think our water budget, just a draft went to the board last week. It should be approved in February, and I think typically we sit down with FinCom in March.
Okay.
So we can do it all as part of that meeting, or we can do it separate, whatever.
Yeah,
I can reach out to Alicia and whatever FinCom
okay.
prefers.
So what's next at this point? What are next steps?
I think I attend that meeting with Nick. We have a conversation with Boxborough. We iron out the IMA and work on the special act and do all that and get, I don't know how many warrant articles it will be. I'm sure more than one, ready for a special town meeting.
So we're just signing the IMA to say, okay, with that, we're okay with this project and the borrowing, but it's still the town meeting of the act, just like any finance article, okay.
I think the IMA
Ours is
is
just the
like,
agreement with Boxborough, all the language in that
The
our
mechanics,
attorneys.
right, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, we could have an IMA in place, and the town could say, no, we don't want to
That's-
foot this bill, and we can't go forward.
yeah,
It's not obligating us to serve the population.
yeah, that's why I would definitely, we've got to get the finance committee involved in this. We want to have a non-recommendation because not enough information has been shared, that's all.
Yep.
That's important.
Yep.
yes.
Oh, yeah.
Just an off-the-wall thought, and this is way above my pay.
Name and address?
Yeah, so-
Is it possible to have Boxborough on the 14 million that is directly related to the Boxborough piece of the project, and have Littleton bond the $5 million that is directly related to the well?
I think I think that's kind of out of the scope of this discussion. Like,
Advanced map.
that's I think that would be a great conversation when we get into this into more detail. But I like tonight. I'm not sure that we're gonna hash that
That's
stuff
fine,
out.
but I'd like that question answered, and if it means we get the state involved or whatever. I mean, this is a special case, and I don't want to get to 2 weeks before town meeting and nobody has an answer to that.
So I think that's a great conversation to have.
Yeah, it's a fair question. It's one that we've been asked, so we
Okay.
can get official response for that.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
And that was Fred Faulkner from FinCom.
Yes.
Just wanted to make sure.
Thank you, Nick.
All right, thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nick.
All right.
See you Wednesday.
Public hearing. We need to open the public hearing. Do we have any comments beforehand?
We received no comments.
Okay. Mr. Clerk? Oh, wait. Do we need to read the public hearing notice?
Not a bad idea.
I
Yeah.
can't read that.
Brian can read it if you want.
That would be better.
'Cause God knows I can't read that right.
Okay. So, Littleton Select Board will conduct a public hearing under Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 51, Section 25BA1 on Monday, 2023 at 7 p.m. In the Sturts Room, Reuben Hoare Library, 35 Shattuck Street, Littleton, Massachusetts, to determine whether to allow the town to opt out of providing early vote by mail for the May 6, 2023 annual town election, which would require registered voters to vote in person for the May 6, 2023 municipal election, or apply for an absentee ballot if the requirements for voting absentee are met, provided further that any registered voter qualified under GL Chapter 51, Section 1 shall be allowed to vote early by mail for any municipal preliminary or municipal election held on the same day as any presidential or state primary or election, or any primary or election held pursuant to Section 140 to fill a vacancy for senator or representative in Congress, and provided further that the opt-out provisions shall not apply to any annual or special town meeting. In addition, the public hearing can be viewed live on LCTV or online at littleton.vod.castus.tv/VOD. All interested persons and parties wishing to be heard shall be afforded the opportunity to be heard on January 30, 2023, public hearing, and comments will be accepted by the select board.
And just to add, so the original public hearing notice was dated January 23rd. We put it on the website. When we had to cancel that meeting due to the weather last week, we reposted the whole thing again, letting them know that it'll be discussed on January 30th, which is tonight.
Great, thank you. Ms. Corey?
Good evening. Thank you for having me. Diane Corey, Town Clerk. So what are the changes of the annual election? Major change, this is the first time vote by mail is being offered at the local level. The clerk's office will do whatever the will of the voters is. Vote by mail will put the burden on the voter, just like an absentee voter. So what does that mean? It means that unless you change what we're going to be doing, it is the responsibility of the voter to request an absentee vote by mail ballot. Town election costs increase by vote by mail if the clerk's office is being asked by you, the select board, to mail out vote by mail requests. Vote by mail was not a budgeted line item for this fiscal year, nor is it for the next fiscal year. The approximate cost for this local election, not including printing, mailing of ballot kits, is about $6,302.58. Please see the attached. It's the
The survey?
no, it is the it says cost of mail service. It's broken down. It says it is converting the voter VRIS data file.
Is it in the presentation?
Yeah, it is. Okay. Well, anyways, it's a conversion which LHS Associates in New Hampshire, there are only specific groups that we can send our information to based on the information that is in the file. So we have to send it to LHS. They have to convert the file. They print a postcard. They'll deliver it to the post office, which includes the shipping. The cost of the above services is, at the time, was 38 cents per mailing piece, which is going out to, at this point in time, 7,548 registered voters, which is $2,868. The projected postage cost is 0.455 cents per mailing piece, which is approximately $3,434.34. So the total projected cost at this time is $6,302.58. So that's an unmandated, it's a mandated cost if we decide that we're going to mail these all out, but it's not in my budget. So looking at that cost, you'll see that that's something that if we decide we're going to do it, it's going to be a cost that we have to start putting in my budget line items. Next, we have the clerks survey. So we've done a survey from all the town clerks. As you see, it says that 82 town clerks responded to the survey. 24 clerks stated that they are not going to be doing it. Of the 82 clerks, they all stated they did not want to do the vote by mail, but none of their select board members, their select boards, supported them. 9 stated that they still had not heard from their select board. They were still having their public hearings. And then 50 stated that they would not be opting out. And Groton is one, as it states, Groton is one of those towns near us that responded and is close to our size and a little bit larger. So as you see, 82 towns responded of the 351. 82 of them stated they did not want to do the vote by mail, but did not get the full support of their select boards. So what is the difference between vote by mail and absentee? Each can be applied for in the same way: by mail, email, fax, in-person application. Each will have a downloadable or printable application that can be found on the website if we decide to do vote by mail. Otherwise, just the absentee will be available on the website. Each can be simply requested in writing, but understand that you must have a signature in order to have a valid request. Well, what does that mean? Well, you can just send us a quick note through as long as there's a signature on it. So you don't actually have to use the application. So everybody's concerned that we're taking away their right to vote. Next, we have election totals from 2008 to 2022. If you look at the election totals from 2022, there is all kinds of numbers that you're seeing. But if you look all the way over to the very right-hand side where it says general elections, 2008, as you look at the numbers and going down, you'll see that in 2018 was 5,268. Then 2022, which was the first year that we actually did the vote by mail, which was the presidential, it went up to 661. But last year, it went back down when we were still doing it. So did it really help? If you're looking at those numbers, not really last year. So concerns about, losing the voting and losing the people by doing vote by mail, it really didn't help us last year because it was really down even from 2018. Next slide. We are a democracy and we all have the right to vote and be heard. We all have the right to vote. We all have the right to vote on election day. We have the right to vote absentee. No one is taking away that right from you. No one checks to see if you're out of town, in the hospital, have a disability, currently incarcerated other than a felony conviction. COVID is a legitimate reason to request absentee ballots. Being housebound is a legitimate reason to request absentee ballots. In conclusion, the decision is not to take away anything from the voters, but to make an informed decision as to what works best for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe this was the file.
Yeah, that's.
Do we have questions for Diane?
I have one question. You said it was $6,200 for this? Plus
Approximately.
Plus printing, or is that all in, or is that plus printing? I was a little confused by the wording.
Printing, yes, but it doesn't include the printing of, now we have to do extra printing of ballots because they have to change from just absentee. Now they change and the numbers change up and all of that. So it just depends on if we decide we're going to send out all these mailings, then now you have that printing.
So the $6,200 is for the mailing, and then we'd have to print additional ballots.
Yep.
But that would be just a ballot per whoever requested. So that's relatively small number.
Well, depending on how.
Unless yeah.
Right,
Well,
exactly. So we can't predict how many people are going to request it, but if we're sending out almost 7,300 requests, we don't know what those numbers are going to be. So we still have to predict, in looking at those numbers, you have to print at least, we're looking at, you have to print at least 2/3 of the number of voters that you have. So we have to print that many. And then when you get the requests, then you still have to print another 5,000 regular ballots, which is far more than what we normally would print.
and do we know about how many people did vote by mail in the last couple of elections versus absentee versus in person? Do we have any way of tracking that?
I could do that tracking, yes. I don't have those numbers here,
The
but
pandemic had a lot to do with that, yeah. The numbers.
But
if you look at 2018's numbers, though, 2018's numbers were the same as the 6,200 versus, the numbers were the same for those 3 years. 2018, we didn't have the vote by mail, and the numbers were the same as 2020 and 2022. So if you're saying that, how well did it help? If you're looking at those numbers, they really, we did do a lot of vote by mails, but it didn't help our numbers, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So the people that showed up in 2018, would they have showed up in 2020 and 2022? I would say yes, they would, but they had the convenience of having a vote by mail,
Okay,
is what I'm trying to say.
thank you.
I do. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Diane, thank you for your presentation
Sure.
and bringing this forward. So just a couple of questions. You're speaking to our annual municipal election only? Or this-
Exactly, because
okay.
by law, you have to do all state and general elections and primaries and everything. This
You
is
have to do
something.
vote by mail for
By
this.
mail, they
Okay.
have to.
So this is just for the select board members?
That's
planning
correct.
This is
committee?
Just local.
Okay.
Yeah,
This
and
is
this
strictly local.
does not apply whatsoever to our town meetings.
That's correct.
Okay, I just want, I think might have been some confusion amongst the
Yeah,
public
no,
about that, so I
no.
just wanted to.
Just the local election.
I wanted
And
to
this
clear-
has to be done every single year, so it's not like it's carte blanche from this point on. It's every single year this has to happen,
You would have to go through this process.
every single year.
And so are you required in general to send out the option to all the residents? Or is the onus on the residents to come to you and say, I
So
want?
it's twofold. So if you decide tonight that you want, you decide to opt out, then it's done.
Mm-hmm.
If you decide you want to let it go and we can opt in, then it is on the onus is on the residents.
Okay.
Now, if you decide, a third option is that you say you want my office to send out the postcards.
Okay,
Then the onus is on the clerk's office.
and that was the cost that you were speaking to? Okay.
Yeah.
But sending those postcards is not mandatory?
That is not mandatory.
Okay.
That's correct.
So it
Which
just
means it's on the onus is on the residents.
So the difference between an absentee ballot and vote by mail is almost non-existent? at
That's
that point?
correct.
Okay.
That's correct. So everybody can still absentee vote.
Okay,
That option is still there.
sorry, I interrupted you,
Yeah.
Cindy.
No, that's okay. So they can still absentee vote for the
Yeah.
annual municipal election?
That's correct. That option never
COVID
was taken off the
For
table.
COVID reasons? Okay,
Yeah.
interesting.
And that's
All
still-
right.
And the absentee voting is still available until noontime, the day before the election.
Okay,
And the only difference there is that we could send out a postcard for the vote by mail.
You could, yes.
We could.
we
Yeah.
could, just to notify all the residents of that option.
All the voters, yes.
Yeah, okay, great. That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, just to clarify one more time, just so we're all on the same page. So we can do the vote by mail and not send out the postcards.
That's correct.
And that's effectively what we have been doing by the absentee voting. What would be the difference? If we're not sending out the postcards and we're still doing the vote by mail, what does the resident see?
What is the difference between the two?
So if we decide not to send out the postcards, so we're
Yes.
opting in to vote by mail,
Yeah.
but we're not sending out the postcards.
Yep.
What would be the difference the resident sees this year versus a previous year when we didn't have vote by mail?
Potentially, there is no difference, other than the fact that the onus is still on the resident. They can vote by mail, but it's on them. It's their responsibility. So a vote by mail is basically a no excuse voting and staying at home.
The ballot is different?
It says early voting, early ballot.
So if we do not send out the postcards, why would we rather opt out, rather than opt out of sending the
Because
postcards?
people don't understand the difference. They think, the voters think that we are going to send them a postcard. That's the difference. The people think right now we are opting out of everything. They think that we're not going to send, they think at this point that we're supposed to be sending them a postcard. That's not how the law reads. The law reads, we're just going to opt out of vote by mail, and that's not what it is. We're just asking to opt out of it. If we decide not to opt out of it, that's all you're doing, is opting. We're going to say we're not going to opt out of it. We're going to allow vote by mail. But the clerk's office is not going to be responsible for sending out the postcard. If that's what you're going to say, we're not going to allow clerk, we're not going to say to the clerk, mandate the clerk's office to send out a postcard. It's going to be on the...
Okay, so just for clarity here, so
Sure.
we are actually can say we can opt out and do nothing.
Yep.
We can say we're going to opt in and tell you not to send the postcards, or we can opt in and tell you to send the postcards. So there's really 3 options here?
Yeah, I mean, it's not really, that's not part of the law for you to say to the clerk's office, you have to send out a postcard. You can say you would prefer the clerk's office to send out the postcards because you think that that's a better option for the residents, and you prefer that
But
the clerk's office.
legally,
do.
all we're deciding tonight is opt out
Opt
or
in or
opt
opt
in.
out.
Yeah.
And then as an elected official, you kind of are determining that other piece on your own with our recommendation.
With your recommendation.
I guess a couple questions. Has any resident ever made it clear to your office or that they had a difficult time voting, couldn't get to our polls, had concern about our poll? And I'm just thinking the origins of this came not only from COVID, but also disadvantaged communities, much larger, obviously. Some of the cities where they didn't have the polling stations where they belonged. There were a lot of reasons.
So I
just want to make sure that our town, that our voters all have, that you haven't had anyone say, I fear to come vote, I can't come vote. I'm just trying to get my arms around how Littleton residents are.
So I think that what we have done is made it easier for our seniors by making more spaces for them to be able to avoid the gauntlet, as they call it.
Yep.
So we put more parking spots, more handicap spots for any of them to be able to park closer to the school.
Yeah.
We've put handicap spots just outside of the school so they can just park and walk in. Anybody that has ever asked, what is the easiest way for me to get to the school, we've offered a van to go pick them up if they've ever had an issue. I mean, we've always been open to any suggestion that anybody's ever had as to how do we get to the school? How do we vote easier? Anybody that's ever asked, we've always been able to do anything for them to be able to get to the school, to be able to vote. If they felt at the last minute that they were nervous, then we got a ballot to them, whatever they've needed. Nobody's ever said that they were not able to vote. Not to me directly, anyways. They may have said it to somebody else, but nobody's ever brought that to my attention to say that they could not vote.
And we're only discussing this because it's an off year from a...
Yes, so every odd year,
Yeah.
this is going to be the one that the local election is not going to be on that postcard from the state that gets sent out.
All set?
Yeah, I think so.
Like to hear from the public?
Just
Yeah,
for
go
a point
ahead.
of clarification,
Yeah.
I think we received 2 mails, and we all received it regarding this from a couple of residents. I don't recall the specifics, but I just, when I said there was none, no, I want to correct myself, that we did get like 2 emails or so.
I recall.
Yeah, there were a few, and I think Cindy, some of the confusion as well on...
Okay.
I think people thought they'd be able to even mail in at like town meetings
Right.
and things like
Yeah,
that, and
right.
the presidential elections, but that's what the government is mandating, the state.
Right.
Yes.
Is it federal or state that's mandating this? Both, okay.
Yeah.
We're talking the May,
Yeah.
the May election, yeah.
May election only, local election.
So I'd like to hear from the public.
Yeah.
If anyone's here, please come forward, state your name, and let us hear.
Hi, I'm Janine Wood. I live on Christina Street. First of all, I want to let you know that I hold Diane in the highest esteem. I've been one of her volunteers at the elections, and she runs the most clean, transparent, the greatest election. She handles the processes above board, and I've seen her walk voters from being registered down to where I was voting. So I just want to tell you how great she is at running an election. That said, I'd like to ask the town to continue to continue to support vote by mail, because in my mind, this is larger than us. It's important across our country to continue to offer and maintain election processes that open up voting to we can as elected officials, as fellow citizens, everyone who's part of a democracy. So I would also like to ask the board to work with Diane. I know she did not bring this to our attention because it's a trivial thing. She would not disrupt her elections in any way or ask for this if this was not a big deal. I offer myself as a volunteer to help with any processes that she needs help with. She needs organizing volunteers if we need to do fundraising to support this. But I ask us to keep vote by mail, because I know when you got down into the weeds, it sounds like there's not a difference here, there is a difference there, but having vote by mail available here in Littleton just feels very important to me in this moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, yeah, please.
Hi, Harvey Atkins, Newtown Road. I do feel that the elections have always gone very smoothly in Littleton. Thankful to this young lady over here, Diane. But I'd also like to say that having two systems that are very close to being the same it's almost like a duplication. And I would think the mail-in ballots would have more chances of things going awry than having the regular signature ballots that have been used for several years. I think just having a mail-in is not quite as secure as the other system, which I can't think of the name of it right now, but that's okay. But I do feel that the systems are so close, and when you have like an open mailing and those kind of things, it does pose the chance for somebody making duplications or signing things that isn't theirs and things of that nature, where the system that has been used for several years is more secure and it has signature verification on it and things of that nature. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Guess if there's no more comment, we can.
Diane, can you respond to, is there really any difference from your perspective from the absentee versus the mail-in?
Security of it.
When it comes in on the security side?
Well, yeah, the only difference is that, the vote by mail would have a sticker on it. Both you have to verify the signatures on them. It's the only real difference is the sticker on the early voter.
But they both require signatures.
Both require signatures.
Thank you.
One more question. Is the largest expense the mailing?
Well, it's the mailing out. It's the two things. It's the the mailing out and then putting it all together. And we'd have to have we've had like for the fall when we had the general election, we had 2 seniors come in for 2 full weeks to get all of the vote by mail out. So they did senior hours for 2 full weeks. So
Is there a requirement that we send out those cards to the registered voters, or could we send a postcard that says, here's the web address for this, to every household in Littleton, for example, like bulk mail? And would that be cheaper?
Would be sending out 4,300 something to every household.
But you wouldn't have to do all that coding, and you wouldn't have to send it up to the place in New Hampshire to get the voter rolls printed out.
True, I mean, you would send it to every household, I guess we could.
But maybe that's not acceptable because we can't guarantee that we're trying to reach every voter. I don't know.
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, without the specific list.
Right.
Yeah, right. Okay.
I mean, I'm of the mindset that definitely, I think people should be able to vote by mail. That's how I feel. But the mail out, I think we can, if you have, how many registered voters in Little?
7,400 and...
7,400. So if you're mailing out 7,000 of these pieces of paper for no particular reason that people are going to come and vote in person, it just seems that seems a little bit redundant to me, especially for an election where historically, how many people vote in our May elections?
Yeah,
12 to 14.
that's a good question.
So
Diane,
it's a
do you have that
tiny
number?
amount, but
It was on the slide.
Oh,
Yeah. It's probably on average
On the
14,
left- all the
1,500.
left
this,
side
we're
there.
dealing with the left side here, correct?
So like less than 1,000 in 2019?
Yeah, so
Is that 602? I can't read it from here.
Yeah, 602 in 19, 1,400 in 2020, 1,400 in 2021, and 1,200 in 20.
yeah. And that's more,
So,
I think we could do a really much better job, certainly, of, at town meeting, one of the last things we say before the town meeting or at the beginning, please remember to vote. We could put it up on a slide, these are ways you can vote. We can do a much better job of that, certainly, even, and through social media.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the clerk's office is happy to do whatever is, you know, the will of the people and the will of this board. It just, you know, it's just a matter of the extra, what you're looking to do. I'm happy to do the vote by mail, but I think that the postcard is what gets the voters. And if they're expecting the postcard and you don't ask us to do the postcard, I don't think you're going to get the increased number of voters. So that's
the difference.
That's my take. That's the difference.
Yeah.
That's what got the voters out, is the postcard, because people automatically sent them back and they automatically got their ballot in the mail. Without that postcard, I'm going to tell you, you're not going to get the increased number of people to vote.
so I also think,
You almost changed my mind.
I also think
Well, I mean, I'm just trying to be honest with you. I think that you, as the residents are looking at this, if they watch this meeting, they're going to be expecting the postcard in the mail to make that check, send it back, and they're going to stop thinking about, oh, do I have to do something to get the ballot?
Right.
And in all reality, they're going to say, yep, I sent that postcard back, and that ballot's going to come to me. The other half of the people are going to say, I don't have to do anything or whatever, because, you know, something's going to come to me. The
Right.
other people are thinking, well, do I have to do something? And they're going to either call my office or send an email or whatever, and they're going to say, no, it's on you, because my office wasn't mandated or requested or strongly advised that this probably would be a good idea. So, you know, back when we had the voter participation committee, we thought, how do we increase voter participation? Well, in all reality, this is how you increase voter participation. Do I want to put more work on my office? No. But if you're looking to increase voter participation, the only way you're going to get that voter participation and the people to vote
Yeah.
is by sending out something to them to say, you got to vote, and this is the way to vote. Check the box, send the postcard back, and
I'm of the opinion that we should allow voting by mail, and I kind of also feel like we should do everything we can to encourage people to get involved. And the fact is that people don't even know that elections are happening.
Right.
Like, most people in town don't vote, and this postcard seems like the best possible way to hit everybody in the side of the head and say, come in, please, and take part in the democracy that's governing your town.
Right. And that being said, Matthew, even if they say they get the postcard saying this is an option for you to vote by mail, even if they don't do that, they still know that the election's taking place on that date and time.
So I'm in favor of doing the postcard and not opting out. That would be my preference.
Yeah, I think the last statement, we should have had you speak the very last part of your.
You should have led with that.
In all reality, the reason we were here tonight was to opt out. But obviously, I understand that there wasn't the support here tonight. So if the support isn't here, then I guess the thing to do is to do everything in my power to get the residents and the voters to the polling location or to vote. And if they're not going to get to the polling location, then I got to get them to vote. And to vote is...
Pull up the website.
Yeah.
The e-notification.
I think, just in general, I think we don't have enough data to say whether our numbers increase greatly over a period of time through mail-in. I think, so I almost believe it's an obligation for us to continue to do it for a little bit, to see if our numbers,
locally.
See if it changes.
I mean, we had nothing.
I think it's
we have
important.
nothing to prove because we've never done it before at a local.
True, but if we are maximizing numbers, I think we don't have a newspaper anymore in town. If this is a way we can do it,
Right. So if we do this, Diane, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, we're like, it didn't really make a difference, then we can opt out of it?
Well, for the May elections, we're always going to have it now for the federal.
Yeah. But there's options there going forward?
Right, if it doesn't work, if it's not cost, if it just isn't...
If it doesn't prove to be cost and time effective?
Doesn't sound like it's...
If it doesn't generate the results it could, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, so just understand now. So the postcard next year won't be necessary because it'll be, the state will do it.
Yeah.
And then the following year, it will... Every other year,
Your budget's
this will
gonna go
be a
like
budget
this,
line.
Okay.
It'll be, and it'll also fluctuate as far as postage is concerned. So it'll be, and printing and all of that. So it'll be right now it's only 6,300 approximately, but this isn't in my budget, so understand that.
I know.
What, I'm gonna have to go back to FinCom and say, sorry, but.
We can talk to FinCom too.
We won't be going back to FinCom. We'll do year-end transfers.
Mark,
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Mark, do you have an opinion?
I can say that I've been all over the map on this one. I think if we're going to do it, then we need to send out the postcards and get the data for a couple years to figure out if it actually helps something, and then maybe in 25 we're back here saying, we sent out the postcards and our numbers didn't change, and it's not worth the time and effort for this, but it's kind of hard to say no without the data. So we have to fix that.
I guess you can be of the mindset if you get one extra voter, it comes out because of that, then it's worth it. And I know that's a hard thing to say, that it's $6,300 or whatever for one vote, but that's someone you reach that wouldn't have voted otherwise potentially. So.
Okay. So do we need to take a vote on not opting out?
Yes, but before you do that, there's, one thing that I just want to bring up too, because I think it's a good time to bring it up, is, we always talk about keeping our residents informed. We've heard that we don't have a municipal, a newspaper. And, we do have on our website e-alerts, and we have a new system that, unfortunately, we were checking today, and only 250 of our residents have opted to receive notifications, and those can be via text message, via email, or via phone call. But that's a great tool that we would have to keep people informed as to what's going on. So as voting's coming up, the night before, we could send out that text message to people and, and let them know. Our town meeting's coming up, events that we might have going on, or Oktoberfest, or Thursday, or anything else, touch a truck. We're trying to get that message out there, and that's a great way to do it. So if people just go to our front page of our website, hit e-alerts, right on the top of the next page, when that comes up, sign up for notifications. We're trying to be more transparent and make our residents be more aware of what's going on, and that's just one of our tools in our toolbox that we hope to get that message out there.
I say that at every one of our meetings.
It's a great point, Gary. I think it'll come up with the vacant board positions to remind people to sign up for e-alerts.
So I would also add for the May election, when we publish the May warrant, we can, I think it already says when voting is, but it can also say, and here's how you can request, absentee votes and mail-in or things like that. So we can do a better job of publicizing it through things we already send out.
Right, we talked about that today too.
First page, even.
Yeah, we always have this page is left, well, not always, depending on the number of warrant articles, this page intentionally left blank. Well, we talked about utilizing that for different announcements or different
advertisements.
Yeah, free advertisement for ourselves. Yeah.
I think we need to close the public hearing.
Yeah.
So I need a motion.
Is there no more comments?
Motion.
Oh, no. Is there anyone else have comments before we close it? No? Okay.
I'll move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion made by Gary, seconded by Cindy. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0. And I'll take a motion to not opt out.
Move the select board vote pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 53, Section 25. 54, Section 25B, A1, to not opt out of early vote by mail for the municipal election on May 6, 2023.
Second.
Motion made by Mark, seconded by Cindy. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0. Diane, I'll volunteer to help with the ballot.
You can't.
You're on the ballot.
Nice try, Matthew.
So I look like an angel, and I don't have to do any work.
Do they also have to make
A recommendation
recommendation?
for the
How about
postcards?
No,
okay.
no, we've opted out. We'll do the postcards.
You got a good feel of where we're at, Dan?
Yeah.
Thank you, Diane.
You're an
Thank you
elected
very much.
official. It's all yours now. That was funny though.
Joint meeting with sustainability.
Public input.
Public input.
Oh, thank you. Public input? Please come up. Hello again.
Hello, Rhodey Adam of 5 Old Farm Road, and I'm sure it will be less than 2 minutes.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, first of all, for providing public input time for residents. We've hit a roadblock and are in need of some action from the town. There are fallen trees from town-owned property, which is from parcel Great Roads U232-5A. On December 23rd, 2022, 2 town trees fell on our property. One fell on our shed, causing structural damage. The other tree into our backyard, fortunately not hitting anyone. We emailed the town. Stephen Witten, highway superintendent, was very responsive and made a site visit, determined the trees are in fact on town-owned property. He stated he would contact town insurance and Conservation Commission, which he did. As of this date, we have not heard from the Conservation Commission, the admin or agent, or the land steward of this property. We have no reason to believe the Conservation Commission members have received communication regarding the fallen trees. We have watched the 2 Conservation Commission meetings held after the incident, hoping the fallen trees would be addressed. Note, it is necessary to watch the meetings as the agendas do not include topics addressed in a meeting are often vague in description, and all parties connected to a topic are not always made aware that there will be discussion. We've contacted a contractor to remove the trees but in order for the work to be done and being respectful of town protocol and requirements, to access the town property and removal of the town property is required. Additionally, noticing concerns that are there, this contractor also indicated that there are other trees there that are possibility of falling also. This is due to the clear cutting of the trees on the town-owned parcel and the vegetation in the front part of that parcel of the town-owned property. The contractor indicated the ground where these trees stood has become very saturated, causing the tree roots to rise to the ground surface, giving no resistance to gusts of wind. The clear cutting has also caused a hazardous vulnerability to these trees. So we'd like to meet with the town to discuss removal of the other trees at some point before more damage is done. But immediately, we're looking for access to the town-owned property to have the current fallen trees removed. And please let us know how we can get permission for our contractor to respectfully access town property to remove those trees, and so we can also begin repair on our shed. Thank you.
So, I think Amy mentioned earlier, that's conservation, so perhaps requesting to be on the CONSCOM agenda and work with them as far as gaining access to that land.
Well, the reason why we're here is that request has already been made, but we have had no action by conservation, by CONCOM.
I think I have your email, and perhaps we'll reach out, Ryan will reach out to you later this week, and then we'll see how we can help facilitate that.
Thank you.
I just want a point of clarification. What was the date this happened?
It was on December 23rd, 2022.
And what's the address, or what's the parcel number?
It's parcel Great Road U2 32 5A.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No, we can look it up, that's okay.
Yeah, the parcel, give me the map again.
Oh, yeah.
Ryan, yeah, please.
Are there any other public comments?
Just write down your email too, and then.
If not,
just so Ryan.
board member updates? Mr., no, Cindy.
Yeah.
We'll start with you.
Oh, certainly. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Because I've started with Mark, I don't know why.
Yes, you always go
Sorry.
right. So I have a list, so if the board will indulge me, I would
Yes.
appreciate it. So I'm just going to start off by acknowledging that we went to the Mass Municipal Managers Association annual meeting last weekend, which is an event that this select board has attended for the past several years. It's a great event because it's select board members, board of selectmen members, it's town administrators, town managers, from all over the state. And we go into Boston. They have different breakout forums and seminars, the governor's there, the lieutenant governor. It's really a well-attended event, and this year they said it was the highest number of participants that they've ever had. So one thing that I love about this event is being able to take something away and bring it back to Littleton. That's how the Littleton Coalition Against Addiction came about after attending a few seminars over the years discussing the opioid crisis. So one of the seminars I attended this past year, it was excellent. It was called Building Community Trust Using Public Engagement. And it was put on by a communications officer from the town of Lexington, the town of Needham, and the town of Amherst. And they basically gave a playbook on how to start a town newsletter. And what they have experienced, and everybody else in the room, it was a packed room, was really interesting. It's similar to what we've experienced here in Littleton. Is what's happened with the Littleton Independent is no longer our local newspaper, and that's become commonplace across the state with many other towns. So, these other communities, they've had a funded position for a communications officer, which is something that's not part of our budget. It's not a position that we've ever discussed as a board. But there was a woman who came forward, she was from Topsfield, and she actually was appointed by that board to be the communications officer, and she runs the town newspaper. So what I'm going to do is I'm preparing a PowerPoint to share with the board, just to share what I learned and share with the public too. But there's a lot of potential there. I think that we could actually have a town newsletter. And it would be really, really helpful, especially what we were just talking about as far as the upcoming election. Anthony mentioned e-alerts and just trying to get the word out to the public. So I was really excited about that. So I'm going to put that together for the board so that we can talk about it at a future meeting. The second thing I wanted to talk about was the Durkee Farmhouse. Matthew and I both sit on the Affordable Housing Trust Board. There's been some talk over the years about the farmhouse being gifted to the town, that we wanted to use it for affordable housing purposes. I did reach out to town council to ask about what is that process, because the gift of that was done through the Durkee Farm Development. So he explained to me how that needs to move forward now. And essentially what it is the planning board needs to notify Mr. Guthrie, who's the gentleman who's going to gift the farmhouse, that his obligations under his special permit are now complete. And then we then need to get a letter from Mr. Guthrie gifting us the farmhouse. So I did reach out and I reached to the Conservation Commission too. They did get back to me. He's fulfilled their obligations. I'm just waiting to hear back from Maren and the chair of the planning board on that. The other thing I just wanted to bring up to the board is I did meet with Chief Pennard and went through Part 1 regulations of the bylaws. He and I went through a lot of them, several of them that were very outdated. They kind of became obsolete with the implementation of Chapter 90. So I've asked Anthony to put that on the agenda for a future board meeting so that we can talk about that. Other thing I wanted to bring up is we had a great meeting. Mr. Nordhaus attended with me with Shannon Egger regarding the orchard.
No, it wasn't me. It was Mark.
Oh, did I say Mr. Nordhaus? I meant Mr. Rombacher. I'm sorry, I'm looking right at you, Matthew.
Was I there?
Yeah, no.
I don't think I remember.
The other guy. And so that was really good. It was much better to have an in-person meeting as we've been trying to talk this through via Zoom, and that just hasn't been productive. So looking forward to moving that forward, and we're really looking to have something to the board and have this finalized finally by mid to late February.
Great.
So just to give you an update on that. And then finally, I just wanted to mention, I did talk about at the last board meeting, Sleep in Heavenly Peace, which is a great organization run here right out in Littleton, and they build beds for children that don't have any in Massachusetts, which is just crazy if you think about it, that is actually something that's commonplace. I guess what happened was somebody that they gave a bed to, they posted a TikTok video and it blew up. And so they're now getting a lot of requests from people in the state that didn't realize that this was a possibility. So they're doing a building event on Saturday, February 18th, right here in Littleton at Dolphin Insulation, located at the mill, between 10 and 2 p.m. And they're looking for volunteers for that.
Can you say that date again?
February 18th?
18th, okay.
Yeah. And so that's at 410 Great Road. So they're looking for volunteers for that. And the other organization that's really wonderful is Annie's Kindness Blankets. So it's a group that comes together and they make beds and they donate them to Sleep in Heavenly Peace.
They make blankets.
Blankets, yes. Yeah. I'm sorry, did I say beds? They make blankets. And so they're doing an event on Sunday, the 19th, at the Congregational Church between 3 and 6. If anybody wants to stop in there and help make some blankets to go with the beds, that would be wonderful. That's all.
Thank you.
Sure.
That was a lot.
It was.
Mr. Wilson?
I yield my time to, in more somber note, we did have passing of Sergeant Doug Landry's father this weekend. I just wanted to make sure that we acknowledge that and wish him and his family well during this time. I attended the conference as well in Boston, and Mark, I know you did too. A fantastic conference. I think it's, mine wasn't probably as fun as yours, some of the stuff you're coming back with. It's more the mundane, the finance, some of the municipal finance and things like that, but very informative, a lot of good information out there, as always, a lot of good networking opportunities to help hopefully get some more people to our town employed in our town, but overall just a great event. I definitely plan on attending that every year. So, thank you.
So we had a meeting today with the water department in Salapoli about the sewer. The sewer is out to bid now, and they're expecting the numbers back on March 15th, and we'll reconvene with Sal after that point going forward. They're hopeful that their engineering estimates are high. So, yeah, things are moving forward on that. As I also was at the conference, I attended a workshop on transportation, and I actually stayed afterwards to talk to the person from Mass DOT to say, hey, we have this bridge over 495 we'd like to get widened. And basically,
George Sanders there.
I was channeling my inner George. And she basically said we need to go through MAPC and Magic to make that happen. So I think Anthony's waiting to be on that for official approval from someone else, or
Yeah,
but anyway,
they-
we need to
they-
get more involved with that to make
Yeah,
that
they
happen.
just sent me a notification for the meetings, and I asked, it'd be nice to have some of those dates in advance so I can plan my calendar accordingly and not know about a meeting for 2 days from now. Usually my calendar is pretty booked. So, yeah, and Myron does attend as well, so.
And the other seminar I'll lead into the sustainability thing. I attended one on electric vehicles, and it was actually very interesting. Concord has done quite a bit of work on electric vehicles. They have a plan for their entire fleet, basically, on what can go electric when. They have plans for how they're having to upgrade their buildings, as they electrify the police department, what chargers they need to put in and things like that. And I'll reiterate that they said there's a ton of money out there through the Inflation Reduction Act and other things for these that we really need to be considering. Concord, by the way, we talked about it a little bit earlier. Concord has been having electric buses since 2016. So,
Electric school buses?
electric school buses.
Hybrid or fully electric?
Fully electric.
Oh, interesting.
Their highway department, it was very good. They said they're using electric mowers now. They have the commercial electric mowers. They use the chainsaws. The people love the electric chainsaws because they're so much lighter. They just said, make sure when you buy the equipment, you buy the quality stuff, because if you buy the cheap stuff, it'll break it and no one will want to use it. So,
Great.
it was a great program, and I agree with Gary.
Going every year.
Going every year.
I don't have any updates this week, so we will move on to sustainability. Hello. Do you have a quorum?
We don't have a quorum. Sarah Rambacher from the Sustainability Committee. So we've sent in a request that our committee would like to be funded next year for $2,000. This, in part, would be to fund joining in with the Mass Energize program. This is a nonprofit out of Concord. Their goal is to increase community engagement, to motivate residents and businesses to take steps to address and prepare for climate change. By joining Mass Energize, we would gain having an interactive, customizable website that they provide the framework for to engage the community to take specific actions like scheduling an energy audit, backyard composting, that sort of thing. As well, they provide a community of practice, so they have monthly meetings where you can network with the other communities. They have speakers. They collaborate on events between the communities that are involved, and they provide help in organizing large and small events. And they have set up various collaborations and partnerships with nonprofits in that realm, like doing energy audits, or I know we have that available, but other things like finding out how solar would work on your house, things like that. They currently have 25 communities involved, and 3 of them are our direct neighbors, Acton, Boxborough, and Harvard. In fact, we have the opportunity of actually joining and doing it jointly with Boxborough or not. So the first year setup costs $1,000. After that, there would be a $450 or $500 annual maintenance. So that's part of what we're asking for funding. The other additional funds would allow us to do more outreach and education, which is really where I think we can really make a difference in Littleton and getting more people involved, because all the change has to come from the households. They do the actions, but they also provide the funding for the community, the town to do the actions too. So it all ends up coming back to the residents. I guess I'll just, if you have any other questions about what we're asking for.
It seems like it's right in line with funding to many other committees like the Shade Tree, or I have no objection to this at all.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So thank you, Sarah, for bringing this forward. That is one of the things that we talked about as the board historically, is that we appoint these committees, but we give them a mission, but we don't give them the funding. So I really appreciate you bringing this forward. We should definitely talk to our finance team about this. We've done that in the past, as the chair said, with the Shade Tree Committee and the Cultural Council. And so this is just another group that we need to add to the list and get some funding so you can fulfill your mission. Thank you.
Do we have?
So we typically don't hear from the Sustainability Committee during the budget process because they haven't had a budget in the past. But in talking to Sarah, I said, this is a great opportunity to bring this up at this board, and this will be another one of those items that you add to the list that you would discuss on Saturday. We did also reach out to our Green Communities contact and asked if we could use some money through them on our administration costs that we put in for that, and we haven't heard back. We haven't gotten, our initial response was probably not, but we were asking. So if there's another opportunity to do it through grants, but if not, yeah, I think that's a Sunday discussion.
Great.
A Saturday discussion.
Could discuss it on Sunday, but no one.
Yeah, nobody will be there. That'll be a bad thing, Sam.
I think it's a slam dunk.
Yes,
This type of thing. This is,
we're all on board.
we've got to get ahead of a lot of this stuff,
So we'll bring it up on Saturday.
Great.
And then the memorandum with the NC4?
Yeah, that's it.
Yes. That's it. Do you want to talk to that, Rob?
Rob is so comfortable.
Rob Houston, also a member of the Sustainability Committee. NC4 is a collaborative organization of the communities that are essentially make up the third congressional district. And if you go on their website, you'll see the map of the communities and then the map of the communities that have signed up to participate. And the memorandum of understanding is arguably non-binding. What it does is it says we agree that we will work with the other communities that are part of NC4 on sustainability issues. So it's attempting to take our sustainability questions and solutions and work it on a more regional collaborative basis. So this is new. NC4 has been around for 6 or 7 months. The lead person who's leading NC4 is on the select board of Pepperell. And so I'm currently the liaison to NC4. I've attended 2 meetings because I've only been on the Sustainability Committee for 3 months, I guess. So it's a working process, but this is like the first stage of that working process. So we would request that the select board agree to sign the MOU and to appoint me, I guess, as the designated representative. It also brings up something I will say, and that is, if there is any member of the select board who would like to join our committee and lend your wisdom and support, we would encourage that as well.
Thank you.
give you oversight over this budget you're gonna give us, and all that good stuff. Thank you. If you would please sign them.
Okay. Anyone have any comments on it, or should we sign it?
I've been trying to attend their meetings. They're a little tricky to get into, but I think it's a good thing.
Okay.
And we're working on the technology issue. Pepperell uses GoToMeeting, I don't know what it is, not Zoom. And the select board, I don't know, if our select board's much more technological.
So like MySpace?
efficient,
What is that?
But he's not been able to turn on the GoToMeeting for our meetings. So it's been a bit of a challenge technology-wise.
Anyone else comments, questions?
No, I don't know, do we need to vote on this? We do.
Yeah, there's a motion to,
He's got,
like, all, just all three, yeah.
just you.
It's the same thing that's crossed out here.
That's correct, yeah, or you did, yes.
Yeah, it's not
It's just
supposed to be,
easier to read
it's not
this one
crossed
than
out on our copy. I don't know how it printed like that.
Okay. Move that the select board vote to enter into a memorandum of understanding, MOU, between the town of Littleton and members of the North Central Climate Change Coalition, NC4, for a period of 2 years from the effective date of this agreement and may be extended upon written mutual agreement.
Second.
Motion made by Mark, seconded by Gary. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0. I will sign it.
Thank you.
It's right here in front of me.
Thank you very
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, select board discussion, Ms. Napoli.
Thank you,
Policy on solicitation.
Thank you,
No,
Mr.
not that solicitation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is part of the goals of the Select Board to review our policies and our regulations. This is something that the Select Board should be doing on an annual basis. It's kind of fallen by the wayside, but Mark and I have been working on this for a few months now. So this is one that I wanted to bring forward, just because we, as you know, the past few meetings, with the exception of this one, we usually have a gift acceptance line item in our agenda, and the monetary threshold for that is very low. So it seems like some of those donations could have just been handled by the town administrator without coming before the select board for approval, and so that's something that we've historically talked about. So that was one of the reasons why I wanted to bring this forward. There's some other language in here too, I think that we really should dive into. And really the intent to bring this tonight was just to put it before you and give you a chance to look at it, and then bring it back to a subsequent meeting so we can have a more in-depth discussion, but just to get this in the queue of one of the policies that we're going to review and vote on.
So if I can add on to, Cindy and I had talked about this a little bit more. I think what we should be doing with these policies is, like this one, we'll bring it unedited to the board. And then one of us will take feedback back from the board offline. And at the next meeting, we'll present a new abridged policy.
And vote on it.
And then the following meeting, we would vote on the final draft. So, that's the way, so then it's basically 3 meetings to go through it, but everyone can see what we were started with, make suggestions offline, and then we'll come back with one. So I don't know if you want to take the lead on this one, or I will, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I can take the lead on this one, that's fine.
But, yeah, so.
We could have one in each stage though, right?
Yeah, so
Just
I would
speaking.
think we will start like having multiple policies going
Right.
forward. We won't get through them.
Okay.
Right. So we, there were a few that we previously talked about. There were questions on 2 of them, and what I'm going to do is put together a grid just so that we can keep track of what we've talked about. I did send those off to town council because we as a group had questions for him. They haven't gotten back to me, so I'll follow up with them on that piece of it so that we could maybe finalize those. I know, Mark, you were working on one regarding the use of town-owned space. You were going to look into that too, but just to put it in there that we have talked about it and this is what we discussed. But like you said, Matthew, just to keep a cycle going and keep going on it. So, yeah.
So I don't know if we want to, what we think a fair policy is for where we start on. Right now it's $500, I think, for the amount before we have to vote.
I thought it should be significantly higher.
Like 5,000?
because it's still, as always, we can have in there, if the individual wants to come to the board, because, so we can recognize it that way, but I think how many times has this come up?
Right.
Where you or one of the department heads has to come in and just do it. You think 5,000?
I don't know, I just threw that out there, I don't have any idea.
Do you have a feeling for it, Anthony, or comments?
So one of the things before we talk about that, I think there's a difference between tangible, intangible property, real property.
Yes.
I think needs to be added in here, and we already have cash in here. So, there's been talk about donations of the Tuttle House and different things like that. I just want to make sure that that gets incorporated into this policy. The donation of the Jerky Farmhouse, like that.
Yeah, that's in there, but I don't think Anthony can accept.
He better not.
No, but what I'm saying is, I think the way this is worded, though, it needs to be more specific. If we're talking about a $5,000 threshold,
can I throw my car at you and you're responsible for it?
I think.
Yeah, I think the cash or check or whatever donations definitely needs to be its own paragraph.
Exactly. Yeah, just reading through this, that was just one thing that jumped out at me. I agree with the $5,000. I think that's a fair.
I can't recall something we voted on that's been bigger than that.
No.
I can't recall one really, I think about 2,500 is probably a good break point too. Like, I'm trying to think of one that's been more than that this year, the last year or two.
The Morrisons.
The Morrisons, yeah.
The Morrisons has been the highest. Maybe we got, what was Liz before us with 5,000 from FIBA, I think that.
Yep.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
That was probably one of the higher ones. As far as the Jerky Farmhouse and those, normally we don't accept anything like that as a donation. Normally that's done through a host community agreement, and that's how, or a planning board decision is how Durkee came about.
Right, well, that's interesting that you said that, because when I talked to town council about it, he was just saying that it needs to be a letter, like Mr. Guthrie, just using him as an example, needs to write this board a letter saying, I would like to give this to the town. And then there's a whole nother process to that as far as the title search and stuff. So maybe that can be vetted through this process, Anthony, outlining that.
Okay.
I would think 2,500, that seems to be I'm just thinking of all the little ones we get from EHS.
Yeah,
and then you would just present it as you accepted a donation on behalf of the select board. So we know every meeting, it still comes up, we're just not doing the motion.
Another way to do this too is
recognize.
There's one section that's missing in our agenda outline on the policy is a consent agenda, and some communities will put all of that stuff in the consent, so it's listed and it gets recognized, but everything gets just voted in the consent agenda. Motion to approve the consent agenda. That, aye, but all the information.
It's like the call of the articles.
Sort of,
Kinda.
sort of. So
Yeah.
it's at least another way that it still gets out there. So that's just something else that you can think about. But yeah, I'm happy also to, report it too. But either way, that's just something
put it
else.
in the mail almost and say, here, we got
Yeah,
this
there's a few ways that we could deal with that.
Okay, yeah, so I think 2,500.
Okay,
so we
let's
can at least
start with that. I think that would give us, we'd probably run into a couple a year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay.
And I would think of anything tangible personal property that somebody wants to give should go to the board, because there's a discussion with that, right?
Right.
Sometimes that, getting a house or something is really, as much as it might sound good, but it's not really it's not a great benefit to us, right? Because if we have to do any type of rehabilitation, our costs are just through the roof with prevailing wage. So that should go to the board so you can have a discussion about that.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Same would go with any land donation. too.
Right.
You don't know the history of
Yeah.
it, so it requires a discussion of the board.
Right, okay.
The next item is the discussion regarding your fire chief performance goals. I actually asked Anthony to put this on the agenda because I realized that we don't have, we've never really formalized a policy for how we review the fire chief, the police chief, and the town administrator.
So I asked Anthony to put this on because Gary and I did his review.
We did his review.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was why I had asked this to be on here. just because we completed his review.
The
And
two of you together?
Yes, and we
Okay.
wanted to share that with the board.
Okay.
As part of the process.
Okay. I misunderstood. I thought that was a review that you wrote by yourself.
No.
Okay.
It was part of the annual review process using the forms provided by HR.
Okay.
We did do it on a limited basis just because at the time we did it, he had only been here, a few months, Gary?
yeah.
So we noted that in the review forms. So, yeah, I wanted
Okay.
those to be shared with the board.
That was my bad. I misunderstood.
Yeah.
But it does raise an interesting point, which is that this thing we've dealt with before, which is what that review will now be public record, right?
Yeah.
So if we write one that's, do we want to make allowances for having private feedback to these employees? And if so, like how can we do that? We obviously can't do it collaboratively because of open meeting law, but I think there's something to be said for at least discussing a process that would involve that. Because we are gonna run into something where, we need to have a conversation with that employee that's not necessarily for public consumption.
Yeah.
That was the topic that I was trying to bring up here.
I think when something like that comes up, Matthew, maybe we then need to ask the advice of town council. Does it fall under, another meeting purview?
Like exemption or whatever.
Exemption, thank you. Yeah.
Go ahead, Anthony.
You all right? You said?
No, I'm good. Yeah, I found my word.
Yeah, so there is clear case law on this, and it's anybody that is the select board's doing, it's the same, it's a process that you're familiar with, right? And it's each one of you, just like doing my evaluation, each one of you do your evaluation of the individual. You then turn that into an independent. It can't be another member of the board. And then that person, whomever you choose to do it, whether it be HR, the assistant town administrator, town council, whatever it might be, summarizes the results of each of them, and then it gets read at a meeting. But the actual results of what you happen to submit,
Each individual input does
does
not.
not go out in public,
Okay.
because you don't want that going out in public, but you can't collaborate
Yeah.
on. So the way that we've done it in the past is two select board getting together is really not the right way to do it. And Tom will tell you this, clear case law on this. So,
Are you talking about just the standard review process, Anthony?
yeah, it's just any of the review process that you do, just like for me.
Even when you're setting the standard, that's not really, setting the standard, performance standards is just saying, you're sitting with the individual, this is what I want to accomplish here, this is what we want you to accomplish during the year. It's not really review, it's on the other end.
You can discuss it as a board, it's just like you did with mine, and you talked about the goals, and then those would be passed on to the individual.
But that's different, that's not the review, you're saying.
That's not the
Right,
review,
just
that's the goal
standards.
setting.
You're setting the standards and goals.
Yeah, you're setting the goals, you're setting the objectives, and what are the objectives
Well-
that you want that person to
Right, so what we were planning to do was to bring back what Gary and I talked about with Chief Connor, because he had goals in mind, we had a nice dialogue back and forth with him, and then bring that before the board and just say, this is what we talked about.
Do you want to
This
add?
do you want to add anything to it? So
Yeah, no, I understand, but
Yeah.
I think you talk to council, it's
he thinks we
not-
should be doing it
That's
a
a
different
dangerous way to go as far as
Yeah.
litigation or.
So, I know that this is what the policy is,
Yeah.
and I think what I'm getting at is that's not good.
Well, this is interesting. So we have a
If it
written
gets
policy
challenged.
on that, so we need to review that
So that
policy.
probably should be part of it,
Yeah.
and,
But,
yeah.
but so were you bringing to us just goals, or was it actually a review of his performance, what you said?
It was a review of his performance, and it was goals that
But
he had
it's-
come up with, and
Yeah, but it's nothing until the whole board sees it and
Right,
says, yes, I
okay.
agree.
And then-
Can we
Yeah.
add this?
And it wasn't shared, and it's not included in the packet because it's personnel matters don't get disclosed that way. So
Okay.
I withheld that based on council's advice.
okay, perfect.
Okay, so then we gotta decide how to,
I think the
how to
policy, like
actually-
Cindy said, is probably, Tom, what's the policy? Give us how it is, let's put it.
Yeah, because that's following our existing policy, so that needs to be changed.
It needs to be changed.
Yeah, because we still have, because Mark, you did Chief Bernard's review, correct? Yeah, so we need to address
So that way,
that.
if these things are showing up in Mass State
case.
Well, it's interesting,
Case
because
law
other
and-
municipalities, though, I've seen them post the reviews online.
You can, I don't know.
Even
I
have
just-
PDFs on their website.
Yeah, I've seen them.
It's public record.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the summary of it, however they put that in, if
Summary.
it's,
Yeah,
if
that's
it's,
it, right.
if it's, they put that summary on that form, then that's fine, they can go on that form.
And I think what you'll find is a lot of those ones you see online, those towns haven't been challenged. As long as it's, everyone's doing well, oh, this person's doing great. As soon as it's challenged because it was a bad one,
Right.
that's where the
That's when it
case,
gets
that's
to be,
where the mass
yeah,
case
that's when it
law
gets to
comes
be an
in.
issue, right. And
Okay.
even at the MMA, at that seminar I went to, you know, it was about board relations, town charters and et cetera, and it was funny how many town managers, town administrators said, yeah, I've been working for about 15 years, I've never gotten a review.
Wow.
You know, so it's just, it depends on the community and what they, you know, we'll get to it, next thing you know, it's been 10 years and you haven't gotten to it.
All right, so we're
So,
gonna
so
revisit that.
So just one more thing, just as food for thought, man, we can talk about this when Chuck's here. Perhaps you two could write independently, submit them and have them summarize, and that could be the official one? Because, I mean, I'm just thinking this because we have this history of doing two board members review each of the chiefs.
right.
Just a thought, and we don't have to decide it or debate it
I'd
tonight.
recommend reaching out to council and have
Yeah,
that
okay.
discussion.
I'll- you know what?
whether one or both of you together or somebody.
Why don't I do this? Why don't I send council what we did? Because since it's kind of been a completed process, and have him look at it and tell me how it should be different.
It's odd that it could be challenged when it was signed by the employee. That's what's interesting to me. That's all.
Some employees just don't know about it, and they don't go over things like that in Fire Chiefs Association and Police
Yeah,
Chiefs
okay.
Association, where town managers and administrators, that stuff like that gets discussed.
All right.
All right.
So can we charter town council with me up with a review process for our direct reports? If we're doing it incorrectly now, we should figure out
Yeah.
exactly what we
I
have to
think
do.
that's the policy
To do the
that's in
reviews
this.
and, well, the reviews are one thing, but the goals are much harder. I don't know how we do that through town council, so.
Well, I mean, the
But I don't-
goals
No,
are,
I think that we were saying the goals could be discussed openly.
Yeah, there's no.
It would just be good to know what exactly the process is.
yeah, so that's why I'm gonna send him what we just completed and ask him how it should be different.
So I'm taking that also means that since we don't have this, we shouldn't be doing mid-year reviews of our 3 reports. Until we know what council says.
Well, that was under, so mid-year reviews was something that I was gonna talk about.
Yes, I know, but Chief Pinard actually asked me about doing a mid-year review for him, and if we're saying we don't know what the process is for doing annual reviews, we must not know what the process is for mid-year reviews
So,
either.
Why don't we
So-
jump right into that while you started that discussion, we'll go back to, if that's okay, Mr.
Yeah,
Chairman,
that's
we'll go
fine,
back to-
absolutely.
So, one of the things during my staff meeting is I talked about doing mid-year reviews, which never happened in the town, you know, and we've always just done an annual review process, but, you know, I truly believe, you know, halfway through the year that we have that sit down and we talk about areas where we all need to improve, you know, there's not a perfect person amongst us. And it's something where I don't want to wait until June when I evaluate a department head to say, geez, you may have been deficient in this, and this. You know, I want them to see what I see or hear what I see at the midpoint and be able to make those corrections, because ultimately I want every one of our department heads to succeed. But if we don't pass on, or at least if I don't pass on that information to them or that critique that Ryan and I may have, they're not aware of it. And I don't want them to wait until June and say, geez, well, why didn't you tell me I wasn't doing X, Y, and Z? You know, you really want them to have an opportunity to better their performance, not be surprised. You know, I think none of us want to be surprised at the end of the year. We want to know if we're not doing something that either the town administration wants or even the board wants, that information gets passed to us so we can improve and we can meet the goals and objectives that you set forth, our shortcomings. So that's what I'm trying to do on the department head level. Matt, Chief Pinard, heard about that, and that's why that was approached to Mark, and we've been talking about my evaluation, so I feel we're constantly doing that, but I'd even like to see that too, right? As part of this process, let's do that mid-year review. Some places do it quarterly.
Yeah.
Where we didn't do it yet, I think mid-year is a good place to start, but, the once a year, and then it just becomes, we're going through the process to get a step raise, but it's really a meaningless process. And I want this to be more of a meaningful process and to help people become better managers for the town.
So I'm all in favor of feedback, regular feedback. The only thing that concerns me is the overhead of having the 5 members of the select board do 3 reviews twice a year. I mean, that seems like we have enough trouble getting one done,
Well, that's a discussion, Cindy can throw to town council
Right.
and say,
Is there
or maybe we don't do it for the direct reports.
Right.
Maybe it's not something you want to do for, but I think for the town council, it's a preference thing. And you're right, I know it's a challenge to get, really ultimately 5 volunteers for all intents and purposes to take the time that we're looking for to do.
Right. So Anthony, with this thought process, are you seeing this as something that there's an issue and you're trying to address it, and it's like a good trigger to say, okay, I'm going to address it mid-year?
Yeah, pretty much.
Is that kind of the thought process?
Yeah,
Or is it just kind of like a check-in and how are you doing on your goals?
It's kind of both. Exactly. It's kind of both. It's to, how you doing on your goals? How are you doing? Here's where, these areas where you get evaluated, and I just want to bring some issues to your attention type of deal. And I want you to be better.
Right. Right. I think that's a good idea. I'm just wondering if it should be quarterly. But it's
it
hard.
probably should be, but I'm like, we should at least start mid-year, and that, every, once, that
We'll make
midway
it like
point.
it's, the trigger's mid-year, but if something comes up between A and B, you can still have that check-in in between, right?
I don't disagree with you. I think that in a perfect world, I think if we did it quarterly, it's good to check in on people. I just found out recently that there was reviews that weren't done, which should have happened.
Right,
And that's
right.
why I want to address it with that department head, because ultimately that's not acceptable, right?
Okay.
We have a policy, and that's how people get raises, and to not go through a review process is not acceptable.
Right. So if I may, Mr. Chair, just quickly.
Yeah.
Mark, do you have a review that you completed for Chief Bernard or not?
Yes, I thought we already submitted that somewhere, but yeah.
It might be with HR. I haven't seen it.
Oh, it never came back to the select board, though.
No, it has not come back to us.
Okay, yeah, I remember seeing that. Maybe I'll follow up with Michelle and get a copy of that as well, or?
You probably shouldn't get a copy till you talk to town council, because again, if.
Collaboration.
Yeah, collaboration. Well, I think to start the conversation is the
Is
first
it
with
okay
town
if I
council.
bring him the one that Gary and I did for
Yeah.
Chief Connor?
Yeah, because it's something.
I just want him to look at the
You're not sending
format.
that one to Matthew or Mark or Chuck. You have already done something, so I think sending that to town
Okay.
council is okay.
All right, perfect,
You know,
gotcha.
privileged and confidential personnel matter on the top, the drill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Can I ask a question on the mid-year reviews? Are you doing this as a formal thing that goes in like an HR file, or are you just doing this as an informal conversation?
It's not going to go in the HR file, it'll go in our files to use, to refer back to when we do the annual evaluation, to say, I talked to you about this here, and here's the documentation that we sent you, and this is where we think you went astray, and it's just a reference point for them.
Okay.
One's enough in the folder. We'll have to build a new room for folders.
Laserfish, baby.
Yeah.
Special town meeting update.
You want to take it?
Sure. So just to highlight for the board, the town meeting report is now out. Hands up if everybody's received their copies, okay?
Hey.
Good, 4 for 4, then we've done
works.
something right then, good.
Like a week ago.
So that's great news. So that is out. The date is February 15th, and remind the board and anyone watching that we have an inclement weather date that is set for Thursday, February 16th. So if it snows, we'll have to reach out to the public and delay it one night. So just to remind everybody, we've got 10 warrant articles. Just to go over those quickly, we've got the bills of prior year. We've got the proposal to change the annual town meeting date and time. We're reprogramming PRCE Enterprise Fund, amending the LCTV budget for the changes that were made on the class compensation plan, amending the sewer enterprise fund. This is for additional money for debt. We've got the community preservation fund budget, which we're continually trying to chase down and get the right figures for as those updates come in. Article 7 is the purchase of the Indian Hill Music School. Article 8 is a proposal to rescind and reprogram prior capital town meeting warrant articles. So that includes 2 additional components. One I think is for water, and the other one is LCTV
PEG fund.
So there's some other monies that we're going to clear out from that. The Article 9 and 10 are two zoning articles, first being an expansion of the King Street Common zoning district, and number 10 is the firearms business zoning bylaw. So some things to keep in mind that we still have as outstanding. This is just kind of the whole report. But just to let the board know, we did take a few votes on the select board at your January 9th meeting regarding recommendations on articles. I'd like to point out that we are still, a vote has not been taken on Article 7, which is the Indian Hill Music, purchase of the Indian Hill Music School. Article 9, which is the King Street Common Zoning District expansion, and number 10, which is a firearms business zoning bylaw. So don't want to force that on the board, but that still remains outstanding. So what's in yellow is what remains outstanding for the vote, but also too, we have yet to determine which members will be recommending, making recommendations on the 10 articles. So don't want to force that on you tonight, but that is something that you could discuss and could vote on if you were so inclined.
So a quick question as a new board member. So we accepted the articles, but I want to use the firearms business zoning bylaw as an example. It's a planning board article, so they're the most educated on it. They've been having all the meetings, so for us to speak to it, you could do it.
Right. Right. So that one wouldn't necessarily need to be assigned because it is a planning board article.
But you're talking about recommendations or assignments?
Well, recommendations completely different.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's something.
You're talking about assignments.
Just assignments.
That's why when you said all 10 articles, I was
Yeah, same with King Street Common.
Yeah.
I think that, one of the ones that's clear because it's your article is Indian Hill,
Correct.
And whether somebody wants to take that or you want to assign it to staff.
Yeah, well, I mean, all the other articles, really. It's just-
the other articles are pretty,
I believe the planning board articles, the planning board has already assigned a person.
they have. The planning board is assigned to different individuals to theirs.
That's correct. Right.
So I'd rather vote when Chuck is here on the recommendations.
We have time.
And that could be right before town
Oh, it can be.
meeting,
We've done
post,
that.
and
Yeah, we
then,
don't-
the moderator can announce the select board's recommendation. So,
When
yeah,
he calls the
absolutely.
article.
You can do it just like we do. We normally meet and
Yeah.
Right.
We can even do assignments
the next meeting too.
next meeting.
Next meeting,
Chuck to all
right,
of
which is
them.
the-
Yeah, I think we should, actually, will you just put Chuck on all of them and send that
Yeah,
out?
he's not here, so I guess. Chuck
No,
gets
but I just
everything.
want you to send him an email that has Chuck on every single.
All right, Ryan will do that. I'm not
Great,
gonna.
that's great. Hopefully he has a strong heart. So, but again, none of this is to force this on you for this meeting, but.
We'll put it on there every meeting until town meeting, just to
Fair
give you a.
What were we waiting on? Oh, because
Chuck was missing at the last one.
thank you.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, why wouldn't we have done this?
Okay.
In Indian Hill, we were still waiting on for
We
some
didn't have- we
information.
didn't know a
We
lot.
hadn't had a discussion
We hadn't
yet
had the
with
FinCom
FinCom
discussion.
and
That's
so
right,
forth,
That's right,
so.
that's right. So.
All right.
Thanks for bringing it up.
Recruitment process for the finance director.
Sure. So, we had a candidate that reached out to me, and she was my former finance director in the last community I was. And we had a nice conversation over the weekend, last weekend, and we talked about, she was interested working with me and working again on the team, and not again on our team, but working as a team again. And she's very experienced. So, when you have somebody that's interested, you need to react quickly, especially with finance positions. So I assembled a interview committee that consisted of Steve Venuti, Fred Faulkner,
Chuck was on it.
Chuck was on there. There was another FinCom. Tyler was on there. Michelle, Ryan, myself, and we interviewed this candidate right away. And the unanimous consensus was that we should move forward with her. So we did offer her an offer letter. We have an executive session after to talk about some terms of a contract that I want to make the board aware of, but I'm very comfortable. I think that we'd be well served with this person. I think that she would fit into our team quite nicely. And her experience goes back a number of years. She actually worked in another community where Michelle happened to work too, and Michelle's really a career, so she knew her too.
Are you withholding your name for a reason?
I am. I am.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why I'm kind of, until we have some discussions in executive session about a contract, I just don't feel comfortable doing that.
Okay.
Not to mention, I don't want to tip off another community that might be listening to our meetings,
Poaching.
and jump ahead of us. So,
We'll just refer to Alicia for the moment.
yeah, there you go. So, we're really excited about this.
That's great.
I think that,
That's good.
we're ready. I may even ask once.
Tough position.
It's a tough position, and maybe like we've done with other appointments, that we even call a special meeting that we've done that at minute 5:30 or 6 o'clock. Just bring the person in, let's do it, so they can give notice, because, the goal is when talking to her, we could actually have her aboard on February 27th, which would give a couple days of an overlap with Alicia, which would be nice to understand the transition to. Another thing that we need to, it's really critical for us, is we need to go through a munis upgrade, and this was something that should have been probably started a long time ago, and we haven't, and we have to do that by June 30th. And this person in her previous community worked through that same upgrade from
That's
where we
great.
are to what we're going to. So that's another big bonus that she's familiar with the munis upgrade, because that's going to be a lot of work between now and June 30th to get us on that next munis program. So we're really excited about this. So more to come, and hopefully we work out the contract and we appoint sometime either later in the week or certainly beginning of next week.
So we're working out the contract tonight, executive session?
Yeah.
Okay.
Great, thank you. That's good news.
That's great.
Sixth Amendment for Shattuck Street contract.
There's a small amendment that, I think it's, what, 20-something $100 or?
$2,750.
Yeah, so, technically, I could have signed that amendment because it falls within our bylaw, but I wanted to take the opportunity to just talk about, the Shattuck Center, and what this is. This is just to be able to connect 31 Shattuck Street to our municipal sewer system, because we would be decommissioning the existing one, because we probably will, or may touch upon that during construction. So, the project's moving along. We have, Mark does sit in on those, and his experience with the library has been helpful. The expected groundbreaking would probably be in late summer, and they're just right now fine tuning and really reconciling the cost, because costs have changed from when we talked about it before, and, you know, a year, it's actually gotten better in some cases. No, lumber has gone down. You know, when we were first talking about it, lumber was a huge dollar amount, and now that's gone down. That's in our favor. You know, hopefully other things haven't gone up, which won't be in our favor, but, so, you know, I don't know, Mark, if you want to add anything to that.
So I think right now what's going on is LLB has done a cost estimate. Commodore has done a cost estimate from their side, which is, I think it's called the GMP, and then there's just the negotiation back and forth on what the actual final GMP is. The GMP is the guaranteed maximum price that Commodore will do it for. So we went through the same process with the library. You know, we got the estimate from the architect and then the estimate from Commodore, and they were off by, $1 million, and we did negotiations to get it, what we had to change in the process, or, this kind of carpet versus that kind and that type of stuff to get the numbers back in sync. So I think that meeting will be happening either this week or in the next couple weeks. There's still, it's being negotiated between LLB, Vertex, and Commodore to make sure that everyone's talking the same things right now before they come back to us, and that everyone agrees on this stuff. So
it just surprised me to see such a low number. I'm not going to say they can eat that cost, but that's like a sneeze to me, like for them. This massive project, 27, it just seemed like a weirdly very low number for the size of the project.
Yeah.
Like, what?
It's just for 31 Shattuck Street.
I know,
so it's just really, it's not really that much work to connect it to the municipal system.
I agree with you though, Gary.
No, but Gary's saying, like, why are we?
So I think the thing to keep in mind is that there are multiple change orders that'll take place over the course of a project that, that typically maybe Anthony would sign off this one, he just wanted to bring back to you. So these things do happen.
So it's different though when you do the CM at risk. I mean, we didn't have the change orders in that way with the library.
No, and that's the purpose of the CM at risk, right?
So these aren't change orders from Commodore. These are change orders from LLB.
From the town, right? Because we now added 31 Shattuck Street, and we now have to work, so it's kind of outside the scope of what they want to hire for.
Yeah. Thank you.
So the only question I have on the 31 Shattuck Street is when we're done and this property is connected to the sewer, is the town ending up paying the betterment fee, or are we passing that on somehow? That property is effectively getting free sewer compared to all the other all the others, if we're not passing on the betterment fee.
Yeah, I think it depends on timing, and the betterment fee is, I don't know what it would be, but...
You put it into the cost of the house.
Yeah, you put it to the cost of the house. Obviously, the house is really that much more valuable when you don't have to ever worry about a septic system anymore. So, the plan is to use that house as a construction office, so we don't have to rent the trailer, and that brings some costs down. But right after that, we would sell it, and, it's much more valuable, in my opinion, being connected to a municipal sewer system than not, So that's something that we hope to be able to, if we have to cover that betterment mark, that we could recover, in the sale of the property, which really the sale, that we never anticipated making money on it. If anything, we were saving, $3 to $4 million by purchasing that and moving the project over there. So hopefully we recover. If not, let's not lose, that we saved a considerable amount of money, or potentially have saved a considerable amount of money by moving the project from the cliff to the tennis courts area.
Ready for a motion? Unless someone objects to this amendment? No? Okay.
Move that the select board vote to approve the 6th amendment to the Shattuck Center contract sewer connection for 31 Shattuck Street.
Second.
Motion made by Mark, seconded by Gary. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Motion carries 4-0. All right, minutes of January 9th, 2023. Any comments or corrections?
No.
No, none from me.
No.
All right. Take a motion.
Move that the select board vote to approve the meeting minutes from the January 9th, 2023 meeting.
Second.
Motion made by, who made it? Mark? Seconded by Cindy. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The motion carries 4-0.
And that's, of course, contingent on the exhibits.
Thank you, contingent upon the exhibits. And
Yep.
now, I will have a motion, we will enter executive session, and we will not return to open session. Following that,
Move to adjourn the January 30th, 2023 Littleton Select Board meeting at 8:57 PM and move that the Select Board vote to enter into executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A1, to discuss the reputation, character, physical condition, or mental health rather than professional competence of an individual, or to discuss the discipline or dismissal of, or complaints or charges brought against a public official, public officer, employee, staff member, or individual. The individual to be discussed in such an executive session shall be notified in writing by the public body at least 48 hours prior to the proposed executive session, provided, however, the notification may be waived upon written agreement of the parties. Fire chief. And Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel, town administrator, finance director, police chief, deputy police chief, fire chief, and deputy fire chief.
Just a friendly amendment to remind everybody we will not be turning back in open session.
and we will not be returning you back. Thank you for hanging in.
Second.
Motion made by Mark, seconded by Gary. Roll call vote, Mr. Rombacher.
Aye.
Mr. Wilson.
Aye.
Ms. Napoli.
Aye.
Chairs in favor, motion carries 4-0. Good night, Littleton.